Any white person who was born, raised, and schooled in the United States of America, if you aren't a racist, you're a miracle. Either that or you decided to educate yourself. Because education in this country is about white is right, brown's all right, black's got to stand back. Because I found out that day that they could kill me, but they couldn't kill the idea. Victor Hugo said, "No force on earth can stop an idea whose time has come." The idea of one race, the human race, is an idea whose time has come. We are not going to be able to stop it no matter what they do. They can elect Trump after Trump after Trump, and that will not stop the idea that there's only one race on the face of the earth. It's the human race, and we are all members of it. You and I are cousins. Now, if you don't like being my cousin, that's too bad for you.
Hello, brothers and sisters. I really hope you're all doing fine from wherever you're watching me from now. Jane Elliott has been calling out her race for all the pain they have inflicted on the black community. Now, she has always been talking about how the white privilege has made a group of people to see themselves as superior and to continue inflicting injustices on the black community. Now, she has been calling out all the people around the world to treat themselves equally because there are only one race in the world, and that is human race. So let's watch this video, then have a really quick discussion at the end of it. Thank you so much.
But we are all in the same family. We are members of the family of man.
You say that all whites are racist. Can you expound on that, please?
Any white person who was born, raised, and schooled in the United States of America, if you aren't a racist, you're a miracle. Either that or you decided to educate yourself. Because education in this country is about white is right, brown's all right, black's got to stand back. Yellow's mellow, but whites, we educate in a way that says that white males have done all the adventures, have made all the adventures, have done all the discovering, have made all, everything that is good and has been accomplished according to social studies, which is actually anti-social studies, by white males. It's a lie. But we do that in order to maintain the myth of white superiority. The myth of race has to be maintained at all costs in this country. Because if white people have to give up the color of their skin as being something that makes them perfect, what do they have left? If we start teaching the truth about history, if we start teaching about Nile Valley contributions to civilization, it will totally change the way we conduct ourselves in the classroom. It will have to. Columbus didn't discover America. You can't discover a place where people are already living. But we celebrate that every October. It's a lie. We need to get over, we need to stop telling the myths and start telling the truth.
So when you tell people that they're racist, and it must have some kind of effect because most people will say, I'm not racist.
I'm not a racist. Why, some of my best friends are black.
Right.
Yeah, and then you say, name one. Or this one, I don't see color. And when some woman says to me, I don't see color, I say, I knew that if you saw color, you wouldn't dye your hair that way. Or I say, if you saw color, you wouldn't wear that shirt with those pants. I believe that you don't see color. It's an attempt to deny skin color. And it's an attempt to deny what's wrong with seeing the color of my skin. Is it all right for you to see me kind of pink? That's okay for me. I don't mind. And I suspect that you don't mind being seen the color you are. You have a right to be what you are. And until people in this country and people in this world get it into their heads that the first modern human beings that evolved on this earth were black women. They evolved in sub-Saharan Africa about 280,000 years ago, and every human being on the face of the earth today has the memory of those black women's genetic structure in their genes. Now, we don't want to admit that, but that's the way it is. And as people moved farther and farther from the equator, their bodies produced less and less melanin, so their hair, their skin, and their eyes got lighter. As they moved into the east, they ate a lot of fish and a lot of vegetables, so their skin took on a different tone. I found that out when I was raising little kids. My husband worked in a supermarket. He was the head of the produce department. And they had lots of oranges that they couldn't sell, so he'd bring them home. And I was feeding my kids orange juice like you never saw in your life. They began to have an orange cast to their skin. I thought they had a liver problem. So I took him to the doctor, and she said, what are you feeding these kids? I said, well, lots of orange juice. She said, stop it if you want them to stop being orange. Now, if you think that skin color isn't anything other than the body's natural reaction to the natural environment, get over it.
So, if all white people are racist, according to you, can they be reprogrammed?
Well, of course they can. Of course they can. Of
How?
course they can be. It's called education. I'm an educator. The word educator comes from the root duck deuce, which means lead, the prefix e, which means out, the suffix ate, which means the act of, and the suffix or, which means one who does. An educator is one who is engaged in the act of leading people out of ignorance. Now, I know you can change them. The second year I did the blue-eyed, brown-eyed exercise in my classroom, it was filmed by the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation. They gave me a copy of that film. I showed it to my father. My father was about 59 years old at the time. He's been a farmer all his life. He raised six kids, lost one, raised six. Watched that film as a 59-year-old man. When it was over, he stood up, and with tears in his eyes, he took his red handkerchief out of the back pocket of his overalls, his bib overalls, and said, "I wish somebody had taught me that when I was 9 years old." Nobody had dare say to me, "This doesn't work. This is too harsh. This isn't necessary. You can't teach an old dog new tricks because they're wrong." You can teach an old dog new tricks. You can teach people to give up the myth of racism. Somebody taught the Greeks to give up the myth that the sun was a god in a golden chariot that went across the sky every morning. They believed that for hundreds of years. We have believed the myth of 3 or 4 races, different races in this country, for long enough. 572 years or something like that is enough of that. It was a lie to begin with, and it's a lie to...
Trainer and human rights activist Jane Elliott. Now, we often hear about reverse racism now.
There's no such thing as reverse racism. There's no such thing as reverse racism. You can only be a racist if you have the power to institutionalize what you're doing to people who are different from you. What we're calling reverse racism is natural reaction to being treated unfairly on the basis of somebody else's ignorance. Now, don't ever let anybody say to you or about anyone around you that people don't like that person because of the color of their skin. That isn't the reason white people don't like people of color. They don't like people of color because they don't understand about skin color. And they don't understand that we all are descendants of somebody who looked like your mother.
That's deep.
You don't really want to get me started on this because
I do want to get you started.
I'm really angry about how we are miseducating the American mind.
And what I like the most about what you're doing in your exercises is that you come in with a very direct attitude. You even call yourself the B word.
Well, but you see, the B word for me is the one that's most often used to refer to me. It used to bother me a lot. For me, the B word is an acronym for being in total control, honey. So you want to call me that? It'll prove to me that you're out of control. And then I'll whip out my little Lorena Bobbitt fruit knife and take care of it for you. Go on.
So is it necessary to strip away all of a white person's power, like in your exercises, in order for them to see the light? Or is there another way
It's necessary to do what we do in offices and in the military and in schools and colleges and in hospitals and in community groups all the time. What we do is we become our parent ego. We go into our parent ego state, and that forces all those we're working with into their child ego state. And if you watch our present so-called president, he spends most of his time either in his child or his parent ego state. He never gets into his adult ego state unless he's reading off the teleprompter. And he is such a poor reader that oftentimes he makes mistakes, and then he is instantly in his child ego state right in front of your very eyes. It's absolutely fascinating to watch it happen.
Speaking of our president, a lot of people say that racism has risen under him.
Anybody who doesn't say that hasn't been paying attention. It absolutely has. I'm getting more hate mail now than I have gotten for years. The kinds of things that are being said in this country today are things that he has said for the last 2 years. He has said them publicly, and he got elected because he said them publicly. We have a group of people in the United States of America who were in response to 8 years of a black man in the White House and the possibility that they might have from 4 to 8 years of a woman in the White House, will elect anything that walks and can chew gum at the same time. This last election, as far as I'm concerned, was a direct response to having a black man in the White House for 8 years. And it's time to change the White House to the President's house. This is ridiculous to call the place where the President of the United States lives the White House. It sends the wrong message. It says, I remember when Richard Nixon said to a group of reporters, "I'm trying to save the White House for you white people." That says it all. And at that moment I thought, well, wait a minute. Now this is something that has to be changed, and it has to be changed. Nothing can stop an idea whose time has come. It's time to change the name of the White House to the President's house or the President's residence, which has a nice ring to it, don't you think?
Okay, let's just say that Donald Trump, President Trump, is trying to bring the country together like he said he would do. Wait a second, he's trying to bring the country together. How would he go about doing that?
Resign. If he really wants to bring the country together, all he has to do is resign and take his, with him, the second in command, the vice president. That would bring the country together. But right now, the only way he can bring the country together is put somebody else in the president's office. He does not know how to be a president. He does not know what legislation is about. He does not know how to do this job. He didn't intend to get this job. And had it not been for the Electoral College, he wouldn't have this job. Mrs. Clinton won the popular vote. The only reason we have this person as the President of the United States right now is because the members of the Electoral College didn't do what that Electoral College was designed to do. Thomas Jefferson designed that to make sure that no one who was unfit for that office would ever be elected President of the United States. The Electoral College last year absolutely defeated that.
With the state of the country being what it is right now, there's a lot of conversations taking place about, let's have a conversation about race. How would a person go about having that conversation? What can they expect to happen in a conversation
Well,
like
the
that?
first thing they have to do is not talk about tolerance. I found out the day I was on the bottom in the blue-eyed, brown-eyed exercise with my students. I found out how it feels to be tolerated. I found out that tolerance means put up with or allow me to be. I don't need your allowance, and I don't need to be tolerated. I want to be valued, recognized, and appreciated. Put your tolerance where the sun doesn't shine. I do not believe in tolerance because in this country, we tolerate zits when we're little, zits when we're teenagers, hot flashes when we're old, and the flu and bad weather in between. We tolerate ugly things that are going to go away. I don't intend to tolerate anyone. I intend to recognize, appreciate, and value people, not to tolerate them. And I have all kinds of respect for the man who is part of the tolerance group in Atlanta, maybe. I have all kinds of respect for those folks, but we've got to change it from tolerance because the powerful can tolerate. The powerless have to wait to be tolerated. I have no time for that.
I like that.
No, I'm going to get lots of angry responses to that one. And I understand that. But I'm reading a book right now. Everybody needs to read this book. It's called, everybody has to read this. Everybody that's watching this has to read this book on tyranny. 20 things that we've learned over the last 100 years in this country that have put us in the position we're in now and what we can do about it. Everybody has to read this book. They should read this book first, and then they should read The Myth of Race by Robert Wald Sussman. And once you've read The Myth of Race, you will never, ever again go along with the idea that there are 3 or 4 or 5 different races. It was a lie made up by the people who ran the Spanish Inquisition. And before that, there were different colors, but race had nothing to do. There was only one race, the human race. We made that whole thing up. It's time to get rid of it. We have the power to do that. This country got ready for World War II in about 6 months. And you're telling me that we can't destroy racism? White people created racism. Anything you create, you can destroy. God created human beings, the human race, and they started out black women. White people created racism. Human beings created racism. It's time to get over it.
Can we go back 1 second?
Sure you can.
You criticized President Trump.
Did I?
One thing that a lot of people have criticized former President Obama on was not speaking out on race enough. Do you think he failed in that?
What if he had spoken out enough on race? Imagine what would have happened to him. The man is still alive. Do you remember Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.? Do you remember Malcolm X? Do you remember all those people have been killed not because of the color of their skin, but because of the fear of white people that someone who isn't white is going to look better, sound better, act better, do better than they do? Mr. Obama was the president of all of us. He wasn't just the president of black people. He was the president of all of us. The man who's there now is and claims to be the president of the people who look like him. When he says, make America great again, what he's really saying is, make America hate again.
Human rights activist Jane Elliott. Today, most urban sectors, especially Milwaukee, remains hyper-segregated. Why is it taking so long, or why doesn't it seem like we can move the button on diversity in neighborhoods?
Because the people who have the power in this country are the people who have the money. And the people who have the money are going to decide where people live. You need to realize that there are more children attending segregated schools in the United States today than there were previous to Brown versus Board of Education. And that's a fact. You need to realize that it is not the intent of white people to let this situation change in favor of anyone but themselves. And right now, white people are really frightened. If you don't understand the destruction of Planned Parenthood offices, and you don't understand the wall that we're going to build on the southern border of the United States, you haven't read the book, The Birth Dearth by Ben Wattenberg. Ben Wattenberg was a brilliant Jewish man who was a member of the American Enterprise Institute. And he wrote a book, the first paragraph of which says, the main problem confronting the United States today is there aren't enough white babies being born in this country. He was an advisor to presidents of the United States. He wrote the book in 1987. He says if we don't change this and change it rapidly, white people... I said, no. She said, you better turn it on. I said, why? She said, because they shot him. I said, who did we shoot this time? And she said, Martin Luther King Jr. And I couldn't for a minute think that the world was still spinning. There was no way I could explain the ignorance and the lack of civility and the unchristian behavior that this country was exhibiting with the killing of Martin Luther King Jr. And I was crying, and I was upset, and I was angry, I was furious. And I got my husband's supper ready. He worked at Oliver at night at that time. And when he came home, I said, tomorrow, brown-eyed people are going to be on the top in my classroom, and blue-eyed people are going to be on the bottom. He said, Jane, you'll lose your job. I said, if I lose my job for teaching something they need to know, I don't want a teacher. So I went to school. The first student in my classroom came in. They said, hey, they shot that king last night. Why'd they shoot that king? I said, we're going to talk about that. And I asked those kids what they knew about black people. And they knew every negative stereotype that I had ever heard about black people and some that had never occurred to me. And I said, do you kids have any idea how it would feel to be something other than white in this country? No. Would you like to know? Yeah. It was like we've already gotten on spelling and handwriting. Keep this broad talking. We don't have to learn anything all day long. So I said, okay, today, we're going to judge people by the color of their eyes. Brown-eyed kids are going to be on top the first day of this exercise. They said, what do you mean? I said, I mean, blue-eyed people aren't as smart as brown-eyed people. They aren't as clean as brown-eyed people. They aren't as civilized as brown-eyed people. And at that point, little brown-eyed Debbie, sitting in the front row, and this had only been 3 minutes, looked up at me and said, how come you're the teacher if you got them blue eyes? And I thought, oh, this is how this works, isn't it? Here, this little 8-year-old girl can attack her teacher who has been to college, finished high school, and she has the right to attack me now because she has the right color eyes and I have the wrong color eyes. I couldn't believe what happened that day. A tall, blonde, beautiful, brilliant girl came into my room in February, reading at the 6th grade level in 3rd grade. She had never multiplied. I taught her how to multiply.
Hello, brothers and sisters. I really hope you're all doing fine from wherever you are watching me from now. Jane Elliott has been a good advocate for the black rights in the United States of America. Now, she has been talking about things that have made humanity so crazy nowadays, And she has always been arguing out that we are people of the same race, and that race is humanity. And there is no any place we should have reasons to divide people because of their color. Now, Jane Elliott has become prominent since then because she has been educating people on anti-racism activities, and she has been talking this to her own race, and she has actually been so famous about the blue eye and the brown eye, and she has been having classes telling people on how if at all things were reversed, if the blue-eyed were then brown-eyed, what could have happened and how do they feel about it, She has been doing this for a while, and until she's so old. Now, we should actually remember that things have happened in the past, and we are the custodian of our own history, and we are the ones who determine what our history means to us. Sometimes we talk a lot about Black history and how Black people have faced injustices in the United States of America and across the world, even those in Africa. But let's remember, we're the custodians of our own history. So what are we going to do with that history that we have? What are we going to do that will change things and how they have been happening on our side? Now, the white privilege and denial is real. Now, Elliot has been challenging the white Americans to recognize the unsearched advantages they benefit from simply because they have a skin that is white, And she has actually been calling these advantages unearned advantages that you are born white and you start enjoying these advantages, that you start suddenly being treated well, and someone gives you opportunities that sometimes that you do not deserve, so many other things, But then on the other side, there is the denial part of it, that yes, you belong to this group of people who are privileged, and those that have been receiving some unearned privileges in their countries, but you still deny it, And there is this other category of people who actually deserve these opportunities, but they do not have these opportunities just because they do not belong to a certain race, So she has been talking this. Mark, these are not my words. These are the words of Jane Elliott, and whatever she has been standing for all this while. We should actually confront the denial of systematic racism, that some people do not actually believe that they have been committing these these outrageous things to their fellows, and however much they are racist, but they do not even accept, And she has been urging white people to acknowledge their role in perpetuating injustices, even unconsciously, Sometimes you commit these these injustices not knowing, just because it is in your DNA. The systems have protected you, and you're used to doing this, and you feel nothing about it, And sometimes you go ahead, do these things, but unconsciously, like you do not even know yourself that you're doing these things. And Jane Elliott is calling out people to accept and stop living in denial. That's the worst thing you can do, living in utopia, that you commit things that are bad and you still think they are good, because you can say, I didn't know I'm committing something wrong, so I think I'm right. That's not it. So you should get out of the denial that you are in and accept you committed these injustices, whether consciously or unconsciously, and whether knowing with your knowledge or not. So it is very good that we've had someone who has been talking about these things. Africa has come a long way. Black people have come a long way. And there is a lot still that is there to be achieved, And we have the Black American struggle that no one talks about. But one thing that I love about Jane Elliott, she has been talking all about these things to her own people, Sometimes we've had scholars, black scholars from the black community, I mean, and we've had professors, but these professors are addressing these struggles to us and not to these systems, We are the people who have gone through the struggles. The black Americans have gone through this struggle. So there is need not you to tell them or to remind them that they have been having these struggles, but for you to tell these systems that are oppressing them that they should stop. And because this is affecting the black American community and the whole black nation, from Europe, America to Latin America to the Caribbean, everywhere around the world, Now, there is need for us, and there is need for the white systems that was set there, that which were oppressive, the Jim Crow laws and all this other stuff. There is need for us to actually confront them in a right way, I do not say people to go take arms on. We confront them using ideologies. Let's not have these petty fights. We actually should have differences when it comes to ideologies, not personalities or races, that we people of the human race, however much sometimes we tend to talk about these things, but are some people listening to this? Are they in a position, or are they willing and ready to change whatever is happening in Africa right now? So there is the slavery and the Jim Crow laws that I was talking about, which has brought institutionalism, discrimination, that people have been discriminated from their workplaces, from various institutions where they work. This is very crazy and this is very bad. Now, this has led to the economic, educational, and political disenfranchisement of the black community. Black people have been disenfranchised for a very long time, and these Jim Crow laws that were there, and they were set to this to segregate the black community. They have existed, and the systems come in, go out, and people just talk about it. What are they doing to make sure that people live harmoniously and people live in equality, that there is no much segregation again? There is a lot that can be said, and there is a lot that can be done only when we unite, only when we start seeing our brothers and sisters not as competitors, not as people of different color, but as brothers and sisters. Let our differences come when it comes to ideologies, and not to your looks and all that. There has been police brutality and the broader criminal justice system, which has been contemporary tools for social oppression, that we know, and there is need, I repeat, there is need for us to address these issues amicably, because days are going in, days and are moving so fast, and the same systems that were there in 1980s, 1970s, the systems that oversaw the unaliving of Malcolm X and Martin Luther King are the same systems that are still there, and we need a change. We need to see a change. We ain't asking and we ain't begging. We are reminding these systems that we have a voice too, and the black community has played a bigger role in the development of the US and the European Union. You must remember that all these wars that they were fighting against Germany, they won them because they had support from Africa. They took a lot of people from Africa, gave them arms, and and marched them to war without even any experience. So they won these wars at the back of the black community, and there is need for them to respect black community, and there is need for them to come up with policies that are going to be fair and serve equality to each and every human being that lives in the United States, that lives in Europe, and that lives around the globe. There is no bigger, there is no small. if we were to talk about racial supremacy, then we could have had another discussion which could be pissing off to other people, Uh, there is a lot that can be said. If we could draw back from the history that people are talking about, and why is people so upset with do you know why people are upset with Vladimir Putin of Russia? It's because he opened the vaults and everyone saw whatever was in the vaults. And this says a lot about religion. This says a lot about the religion that was brought to Africa and which still exists in Africa. There is a lot that can be said with the due time, but we want to leave everything aside and we want to focus on improving humanity and improving equality amongst ourselves. This world is going to be a mess if we all are going to be at war with each other. They come, they go. We do not want empathy. We do not want sympathies. We want equality. And I've seen so many people talking about that we should be given empathy. There is sympathy. Black people should be sympathized with and given reparations. These are rights, and these are not to be asked. They are to be given. In fact, we should not actually accept the fact that we've been used and we continue accepting being used to date. Now, Jane Elliott has been insisting on education for black folks because he knows this is key. It is education that brightens you up and lightens your way. It is education that will make you distinguish between good and bad. It is education that will tell you, indeed, Black history is great and that it was erased from us, and we were taught a different history from the US, Europe to Africa. And she has been using methods that aim to build empathy by forcing participants to confront their own biases and experience the pain of exclusion and prejudice. Now, they are saying that if roles were interchanged, then we could be having a messed up situation. I do not want to go bold into that, but I'm gonna say this. Black people have gone through a lot. Enough must be enough. We are here not to confront each other for the past. We are here to remind ourselves that we are the custodian of our own history. And we are still the same custodians of our own future, Every vision of your life, you carry it in your hands, It is the vision that you have that guides you through how you're going to live in the world. So let's not be confused. Let's not think that there is some miracle somewhere else and someone is coming to save you from nowhere. There is no one who is coming to save you. It is you who is going to save yourself. Do not actually fall for the traps. Do not actually fall for all these things you see. These are call to action. And I remind you that we advocate for active state of equality in the US, in Africa, and around the world. Not just passive and non-racism. That's not whatever we are talking about. We want real issues addressed, and we want people who can think for themselves, and people who, especially the white America, who can stand against injustices, not just by the word of their mouth, but by the actions they bring about. Thank you so much for having taken our time to watch this video. I hope you all enjoy this and subscribe to this channel if it's your first time. Like, comment, and let me know whatever you think of all these things that Jane Elliott has been standing with. Thank you.